feel like in the seat that I'm in as a contractor, I have to wait for someone to bring the vision to me for me to build it. Well, how about I create the vision and I can build it myself?
Welcome to The Power of Construction, a Procore podcast highlighting the industry leaders who are evolving their business today to forge a better industry tomorrow. I'm Sasha, Reid.
And I'm Kris Lengieza.
And we will be your hosts for today. On today's episode, Kris, we have a guest who is a true entrepreneur. I would say he exemplifies what the modern construction leader looks like. Possesses a very high drive for creating a high growth company. And I'm excited to sit down and have a chance to speak with him.
Yeah, absolutely. On the podcast, we've been talking about the productivity gap in construction.
Yep.
And I think one of the things that today's guest has really done such an excellent job of is addressing many of those challenges that are facing the industry today that are contributing to that productivity gap, whether that be labor challenges, whether that be the skills gap, or it be how we just go about motivating people to do their best work. So I'm extremely excited to have our guest on today, and maybe we should introduce him.
Yeah, you almost spilled it right there. You almost took my part, which is good. But we just want to, with no further ado, welcome Cornelius Griggs to the show. Cornelius, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
We're very, very glad to have you here in Austin, Texas, is where we're actually filming the podcast today. Have you visited Austin before?
I've been here once or twice for some business meetings, but never had a chance to really see the city. So I'm excited about being here for a couple of days to see the city.
Good. I hope we gave you a good excuse to take some time to actually not just go to a meeting and get back on a plane.
Definitely.
And it's a busy week here in Austin. Lots of things going on.
That's right.
Good time to be here.
Let me go ahead and for those of you who haven't had a chance to meet you yet, I want to go ahead and give you a proper introduction. So Cornelius Griggs is the president and CEO of GMA Construction Group. GMA is ranked as the 76th largest contractor in the Midwest, according to Engineering News Record. He is a Chicago native, and he has over 2 decades of experience across a broad range of projects, large-scale residential, public housing, as well as education. And he spent 11 years at 2 of the largest national construction companies. And this is where really the absence of minorities in leadership roles was poignant to you. You took notice of that right away. And what that did is it sparked a determination to become an agent of change, I think in your own words. With a strong belief that construction was a viable career path for individuals similar to himself, he started GMA, which is a minority and veteran-owned small business, and that was in 2009, in part to provide jobs and opportunities to low-income communities. In the role as president, he provides executive-level oversight on business development, construction operations, estimating, risk management, marketing, human capital management, finance, safety, quality assurance, and quality control. For those of you with aspirations for CEO, just know that that's all that comes with that job and some things that are not listed. And from humble beginnings as a home office, the business has grown from 1 million to 100 million in less than 10 years and currently has a $400 million backlog with offices in 3 states. Not done. In 2021, he launched GRE, a real estate investment company specializing in affordable housing with commercial spaces. And in a part-time capacity, as if there's part-time time left in this man's day, Cornelius serves as an adjunct lecturer and program chair for the AAS in Construction Management program at Kennedy King College, which he happened to start as well in 2009, a military veteran honorably serving his country during Operations Enduring Freedom and Operations Iraqi Freedom. He was awarded the Army Commendation Medal for his service during a foreign conflict. One more thing I want to add, because there have been some acknowledgments and awards that I think are worth noting. You've been awarded Crane Chicago Business Notable Veteran Executives, U.S. Small Business Administration Illinois District Person of the Year, Enterprise Impact Award, James Tyree Emerging Business Leadership Award, as well as various community impact awards for contributions to local initiatives. And normally I'd say, did we miss anything? But I've seen your CV, so I know we did, shockingly. That is quite the impressive CV.
I just want to know how big the trophy case is. Like, is it bigger than like Eli Manning's? I'm not quite sure.
It's getting there.
It's getting there. All right. I love it.
So in doing some research, preparing for today, I had the chance to see a fireside chat that you gave. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago now, which was hilarious to me when you got on stage because there was a little bit of a switcheroo. Can you tell us about what happened when you got to that event?
Yes, it was supposed to be a fireside chat, similar to the conversation we're having now. But when I got there, the moderator changed it up, and it wound up being me telling my story to a group of 200 to 300 folks in a private setting. So they cleared the stage, and off I went. So
nice pivot,
yeah,
because it was an impressive fireside. Supposed to be fireside chat, an impressive presentation.
Yeah.
And it did tell me a lot about the man behind the success. And we're really excited to sit down with you today and talk about this. So to kick off, we really want to focus on some of the history and the growth for GMA. In that introduction, I noted that the success of GMA over the last decade included some notable wins. What I didn't mention was that some of the projects you've been awarded, one, for instance, was the Midway Airport Concession Project. Can you tell us a little bit about that award specifically and some of the statistics and stats around how you've been able to perform on that one?
Yeah, well, I think, for us, that was our first active aviation project. So it took us out of a space of, affordable housing, healthcare, and education, which are kind of the 3 pillars of our organization, and moved us kind of officially into the aviation space. So if you ever fly through Midway Airport, you ever stop at the Arami or the Wood Grain Pizza, the Nuts on Clark, all those concessions in Concourse A, those are concessions that were built by GMA Construction Group. But the most notable thing there is that we were the first contractor, African-American or non-African-American or minority, to deliver a 92% minority and diverse spend on a aviation project. So we had 92% MBE and WBE participation out of a contract that was somewhere close to about $10 million.
That's an incredibly impressive number. I mean, having done a good amount of public work in my own day, like this is always a challenge.
Yep.
And so to be able to reach such a high level of 92% is really commendable, 100%.
Yeah, it's something that has to be intentional in the company. And at GMA, it's something that I drive from the top. And I make sure that our executives are driving that down as well, is that we want to make sure that not only are we spending diverse, but our organization has to look diverse, because that's what America is. It's a diverse country. So we want to make sure that our projects and our people are representative of that.
And I love that. And I mean, let's come back to those people. GMA's mission is developing people, transforming communities. I love that mission. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
It's something that came to me one night as I was beginning to put together the business plan of the organization. In those early days of, being locked in my bedroom, thinking about what is it that I wanted to do with my career, where I wanted my career to go, and really thinking about, what I wanted when I was growing up. I wanted someone to invest in me, and I also wanted to be able to transform those communities that I once lived in. So I just took the 2 of those and put them together, and I said, this is an awesome mission, awesome vision to go chase, is that we want to develop people and we want to transform the communities in which they live in.
And has that really honed the projects that you focus in on as an organization and where you choose to do your work?
Yes. I mean, we don't, we say no to a lot of projects because they don't fit what the mission of our organization is. And 92% of the work that we do is in underserved communities. And that's important to us. And it's important to me because I grew up in an underserved community. So we try to focus our projects there and making sure that we have an impact there. So the mission aligns with the work that we do, and we try to make sure that the work that we do aligns with that mission.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like the mission is at sacrifice of profit or growth from what you all have been able to do. So I think that's so important that you can be a purpose-driven organization, but still be able to grow and profit and grow your people inside of the organization as well.
Yeah, I always tell my team that it's about the, of course, when you're running a business, you think about the business transaction more often than the social transaction. Well, we like to reverse that in our organization and think about the social transaction first, because the business transaction will definitely happen, but we have to put the social transaction first. Who are the people that we're impacting, and and how we're going to impact them through the process that we have, and the business transaction will take care of itself.
And so that might be a perfect transition. So you spent a good amount of time at Clark and at Walsh. What made you want to change the model when you started your own company, and how are things different than maybe what you experienced there?
Well, I mean, those organizations helped build who I am today. They gave me the foundation I needed to be successful and run a business today. But I always say you want to wake up, at some point you decide you want to wake up and have a purpose. Right. And you want to build projects with a purpose. Mm-hmm. And for me, that purpose was affordable housing, healthcare, education, because those are the things that lacked in the communities that I grew up in. And I wanted to wake up every day, continuing to build a business and make a profit, but I wanted to do it with a purpose. And that for me allowed me to wake up every day and really get out of my bed and be excited about the projects that we're doing and the lives that we were changing.
And one of the things that I'm thinking of is, as you're kind of setting out on this goal of starting your own company, is we're in the middle of a labor shortage. So finding skilled labor is probably the challenge that is top of mind for most leaders. So when we're thinking about how you're building this business, how did you hire fast enough to grow and stay true to that mission?
Yeah. Well, in 2009, I started this program, the Associate Science Degree in Construction Management. And I started working on that program in 2005, 2006. And I shopped it to a bunch of for-profit universities, and no one really picked it up. And then ultimately, the City College of Chicago saw a need for it, and they grabbed the program and they helped develop that program. But the focus of that program was to go inside of underserved communities into those schools and get folks interested in the field of construction management, because it was a field when I was coming up, I didn't know it existed either. I didn't learn about it until I was already in college. So I wanted to get kids focused on it early. So we started that program, and then 2 or 3 years later, I have graduates coming out of that program, and now I'm starting to feed a workforce that I so desperately needed. One of my very first employees was a former student of mine as well, one of my lead estimators. So that began to be a pipeline from a management perspective. From a trade perspective, we had to go out into the community and partner with organizations locally who were training students on how to be laborers and carpenters, working with the local unions to get folks into apprenticeship programs. But that was a longer term effort. But getting folks into the field through construction management was definitely a easier endeavor, because I already had the skill set to teach them myself.
Well, it's really interesting, to think that in as short a period of time as 2 or 3 years from the effort, right, from the start of the program. I think that's one of the concerns that I think a lot of us have on how do we combat this labor shortage, that yeah, we can invest in these spaces, but it's going to take 10, 15 years to pay off. Right. But what you're saying is this immediate investment, very quickly, because students moved through the program very quickly, and you were able to teach them the skills that you knew that they needed, were able to come and make an impact in your business in as little as 2 to 3 years. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think the game plan there was to cut to the chase, right? And get them the information that they needed to be able to walk into a workforce and be ready on day one. That was always the game plan as I developed the lesson plan, is that let me figure out the 10 essential courses or skills that a person needs to walk into a construction firm and be successful on day one. So we focused heavily on blueprint reading, estimating, right? Everyone needs a good estimator. So I always tell
they're not getting any younger.
So everybody needs a good estimator. So I would always tell my students, if you can become a really good estimator, if you become a really good bean counter, you're gonna always have a place of employment, and let that be your foundation. And then once you get in the organization, you can learn the other pieces to be able to work your way through kind of the matrix of that organization.
And one of the things that came out in our initial conversation was this idea of your hiring strategy around finding diamonds in the rough and your instructions to your HR professionals that this is what we're looking for. Tell us a little bit about why that is such a focus for you.
Yeah, my grandfather used to always tell me, don't always go for the shiny object. So
good advice.
We could all use a little bit of advice.
So I always give that instruction to my HR team as well, and my recruiting team, is that yes, although the shiny objects are nice, we want to entertain them as well. But find that diamond in the rough. Find that person that no one has really paid close attention to, but they've been in the background. They've been working hard. They've kept their head down, and they would really do well if they got the right opportunity. And the reason why I tell folks that, because that was me. Right. I wasn't the shiny object. I didn't come from the big schools. I didn't have the best grades. So I was that diamond in the rough, but I always worked hard. My grandfather used to tell me, AQ over IQ. I take that any day in a person. Ambition quota over intelligence quota. You got to have a nice mix of the two, but someone who's ambitious will go a lot further than someone who's just intelligent.
Absolutely.
So that's what I preach to my team. And I say, go out and find me that diamond in the rough. Find me that person with a high AQ.
And one of the things that I think was also very important to you was seeing executive leadership within the organization that look like the communities in which you're building. So tell us a little bit about your focus on creating that diversity within even the executive team within the company.
Yes, and that's always been a struggle in our business, because when I started and I would go to the boardrooms, I'd be the only person of color in the boardroom. So when I started GMA, the goal was, how do I find people of color and be able to give them an opportunity to have a seat at the table, right? Of course, our organization isn't as large as some of the top 10 players, but we do business with the top 10 players. And to be able to be in that boardroom and be able to provide the diversity that's in that boardroom is extremely important to us. So we've invested in our people, right? We hire them at a critical stage in their career. We invest in them, and then we build them up, get them ready to be in the boardroom next to me. And we've been fortunate enough to go out and find a few good executives throughout our organization. Here in Texas, we have John Adams, who came from Chicago, moved here to Dallas, Texas, and runs our Texas office. He's done an amazing job of building our office down here in Texas that services our entire Texas market. We have Erica Kirkwood, who's one of our vice president and general counsel, an amazing lawyer, also helps us with all of our contract negotiations. So it's nice to be in the room and have people of color at the table, participating in that, what I like to call that sport of construction every day.
Right. And I think Kris and I are both data nerds. We navigate our way through this industry really with looking at, we have an understanding, we kind of get a sense of where the industry is going, but really we rely on the data to tell us where we're really at. And so I wanted to level set a little bit about what we're seeing on the data, specifically talking around diversity. So according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, it shows that while Black people comprise 12% of the overall workforce in construction, they make up just 6% of the overall construction workforce. And that's been relatively unchanged for 25 years. So this isn't a needle that's moving in any direction. It's pretty stagnant. While at the same time, we're looking at, according to the National Center for Construction Education and Research, 53% of the current construction workforce will be retired by the year 2036. So that's not too far off from today. We talked about your growth over a decade. That's essentially what we're looking at here. And at the same time, there's two really interesting statistics that tell us a story here. First is, according to the Associated General Contractors of America, the highest number of job openings are currently existing since the turn of the century within construction. So we have job openings, we have opportunity, but this one I thought was interesting. Employees are also quitting at twice the rate of layoffs or discharges. And that was according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics presented by the Associated Builders and Contractors. So when we look at the numbers alone are telling us a very specific story, which is we have an untapped potential group of individuals who are not participating in the economy of construction to the capacity they could be. Two, We're also facing the retiring of an entire generation of construction workers who hold all that wisdom, all that knowledge that we'll be missing out on. So when you hear those statistics, Cornelius, I'm curious about your own story and the relevance of some of those statistics to your story. So when did you realize that there was this untapped potential within the construction industry to rebuild within the communities you came from?
Well, I think it was, very early on for me. When I started at Clark, building convention centers, and then moved over to Walsh and started doing high rises, right around the recession, the start of the recession, where folks went from focusing on downtown high rises and convention centers to now government funded projects and work inside of the community, because that work was primarily government funded. And that put me back in the communities in which I grew up in, specifically Oggill Gardens, which is on the south side of Chicago, one of the largest affordable housing complexes in the country. And I saw the desperation in folks' eyes there. And I hadn't been back in my own community in such a long time, because I had been working for these large organizations on these really cool projects outside of my community. I had forgotten what it was like to be there and live there. And when I started building there again and renovating there, it sparked something in me. It said, wow, look, this is where you came from. And the folks here don't get the benefit that you have gotten, or have the opportunity that I was afforded at that early stage in my career. So I said to myself, I have to get back here. I have to bring all of this education, all of this knowledge that I've been able to gain through my time, and bring it back here and impart it on the communities and people who look like me and come from the places I come from. I have a responsibility to do that, even if it means I have to take this risk. So I took that risk and went back into those communities. And it was not easy, but I did it, and we continue to do it, and it's something that I'm most proud of.
That's fantastic. And, Sasha mentioned your fireside chat, if we want to call it that, early on. And you tell a little bit of your story you mentioned kind of going back to where you came from. Can you tell us a little bit more about that story and why that was so important for you to get back there?
So I grew up as a ward of the state, which is the Department of Children and Family Services. My mother gave me up when I was 8 years old. Of some unfortunate circumstances, my grandfather passed away, my grandmother passed away, my mother became addicted to drugs, and I wound up in the system. And that's a story of many people who grew up in the communities that I come from. So although it may sound unique to some of the listeners, where I come from, that's often the story. And I just have a microphone and I get to tell it. But I grew up and I bounced around from group homes to foster homes, and spent, 10 to 12 years of my life, really in unstable places and unstable conditions. But one of the things that I always was able to grab hold to was these words that I still remember to this day that my grandfather left me with. Always look a man in the eye. AQ over IQ. These little, anecdotes stuck with me even as a young person. So they kind of kept me out of trouble to an extent, because I lived in environments where trouble was easy to find.
Yeah.
And I was able to kind of steer myself away from, a good chunk of that trouble. And then I later found the military, which was a life-changing, opportunity for me, really cleaned me up and got me to the guy you're looking at today. And then off from there I went. But it was that foundation, that younger part of my life is what I always say gave me the ambition to be able to do what I'm doing today.
Yeah, and I think there's so many members of the Black community who have achieved success and who are successful. And there's always the aspiration to go back to the community and really transform at a grassroots level, as well as a top-down level, the reality that is faced by so many living in those communities. The fact that you've been able to do that, you've already pulled this into a purpose-driven business. There's really kind of endless possibilities standing in front of you. Has this been a big piece of your expansion and growth across the U.S. as you start to enter new cities?
Yes. I mean, every city has an urban community that needs investment. And I said, instead of us focusing on the downtown areas of major cities? How about we do the unthinkable and go into the inner cities of those urban cities? That's what we've done. And we went there with a purpose to start with better quality housing. Everyone needs it. I needed it when I was growing up. There's folks out there that still need it today. So you start with housing, giving people a good roof over their head where they have a place that's calm that they can come home to at the end of a rough day. Great educational facilities, right? We want education to be an equal opportunity for everyone across the country, right?
Absolutely.
The books in the schools in the inner city should be the same as the books in the schools on the outskirts of the city. But we first have to start with building facilities that can house and grow our young folks, right? I always say that, if you think about the school system in urban communities, they're set up the same way that some jail systems are set up, right? And it becomes a mindset, right? You sit in the classroom in the summertime, there's no air condition, the computers don't work, the bathrooms aren't as clean. What if we were able to make those facilities in those inner cities the same as the facilities that my children now go to, that are almost like college campuses for high school?
That's true.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
It allows for a better learning environment. And then healthcare. From the time I was 8 until the time I was 20, I might have went to the doctor once, right? You only went to get shots for school. But the checkups and those are the things that we don't think about because they're not easily accessible to us in those communities. So we started by saying, if we can build better quality, affordable housing, healthcare, education, facilities in communities, we're starting the conversation, right? We're enabling those communities to be better places to live, work, and play.
And you're not just investing in them as projects, but you're really investing in the community by giving them the opportunity to come and grow a career with you as a business as well. I mean, with so many people being completely faced with a labor and skill shortage today, like this approach seems like, why is nobody else doing it? Like, do you have a comment on that?
These projects aren't always as sexy as what folks think about from a construction perspective, right? The high rises, the convention centers, the terminals at airports. Those are all really cool projects to be a part of. What I tell my team is that working on the south side of Chicago is also a really cool project to be a part of, because now you get to not only put the fence up and build an incredible building, but you get to incorporate the people that live in the community to be a part of that project. So there's no project that goes up, whether it's in Chicago or it's Babers Manor in Stop 6 area of Fort Worth, Texas, where we're not incorporating the community to be a part of the project that we're building. We're hiring from that community. We're bringing jobs to that community. We're bringing opportunity into that community, whether it's economic opportunity. We have now become ingrained ourselves and become a part of the economic engine within those cities and within those communities. And what does that do? It allows people to be able to come inside of our fences and see how construction projects are built. Maybe we take that young man who was standing on a street corner and turn him into the next construction engineer. Maybe he becomes our next carpenter. Maybe he becomes the next laborer. But we have to be able to show them that opportunity, not put the fence up and close them out, but put the fence up and open the gates and let them in.
Was it you kind of seeing the ambition of what you had versus the reality of opportunity? Tell us a little bit about what caused you to think towards the future and create GRE.
Developing in underserved communities isn't always the first thought that someone wakes up with. It's what I wake up with. It's what I think about. So I said, how do I speed up the process to get more of those projects going? Well, just like when I started GMA Construction Group, and I said, how do I get more minorities involved in the field of construction and construction management? Because the companies I work for were not hiring us at a fast rate. I said, well, I have to do it myself. So then the same thing happened here. It says, how do I get more investment in affordable housing, healthcare, and education projects in underserved communities? Well, Cornelius, you have to do it yourself. So I started GRE. And GRE became a vehicle now that is developing nearly $200 million of construction projects, affordable housing projects in underserved communities in the city of Chicago. We are now going after the LIHTC Awards. We're now developing the projects, bringing the architects together, meeting with the community, and starting to develop our own projects that GMA will one day build.
You're essentially creating a mastery of the future. You're designing the future that you want to exist.
Yes. and not waiting for anyone to do it for me. I feel like in the seat that I'm in as a contractor, I have to wait for someone to bring the vision to me for me to build it. Well, how about I create the vision and I can build it myself?
I love that. Well, you clearly have a very strong vision. I'd love to hear a little bit more about maybe your vision of the future of construction. What do you think is going to change? Like, you use a lot of technology in your business. I know that you're a big believer in that. You've obviously invested a lot in your people. What are you seeing coming, in the future for construction?
Well, I always tell my folks that we're in an industry that's ever changing. Construction is slower than most industries, because traditionally we have not been a technology-driven industry. But for us, I embrace technology as an opportunity to build faster, to build better, and to build smarter. So what we've done inside of our organization is we've hired more what I call virtual construction managers, where we're now taking our BIM models, and we're using those models to build out 50 to 60 to 75% of our buildings before we even put a shovel in the ground. This allows us to we talked about this gap in the workforce, where we have our experienced superintendents and experienced workforce that are retiring, and we're kind of bringing in this younger workforce who may not have all the same skill sets as the older workforce. Well, how do we limit our risk? Well, we start by taking what they're really good at, that the folks who are outgoing were not really good at. Technology. We put them in front of computers. We have them design and build these projects before we even put a shovel in the ground. Helps us with coordination, helps us find major issues and resolve them with our architecture team before we even get out into the field. And then we take that model and we plug it into a great software like Procore, and people are able to go around and view that model while they're on the construction site, see what the actual facility should look like once we put that beam in place, once we set the roof trusses. Here's what the structure is going to look like. That allows us to be able to be ahead of the curve, to anticipate and be proactive instead of reactive in our construction process.
One of the things I think is very clear from our conversation today is who benefits when GMA builds in our industry. I think that is something that's a massive takeaway for me today. Also, when we look at the labor shortage, I think some of these statistics and the numbers and the data telling us we have a 25-year slump, clearly there's a path out of that slump. This is not rocket science, and it's not a mystery. And the other piece of that is really your story around having an impact within the communities that you chose to come back to and build within. I think it's something for every leader to think about. What sphere of influence do you have? And what impact are you going to have when you're getting to the stage of thinking about handing over the reins of your business? So Cornelius, thank you so much for sitting down with us today. We truly appreciate you coming out here to Austin to have a conversation and share a little bit of your success with us.
Thank you. I truly appreciate it. And I hope that as leaders of organizations, we think about, what our impact is going to be when we're long gone from the industry. And when you take your resources and you invest in these underserved communities across the country, that becomes a legacy. You leave a legacy for folks who had never had an opportunity to be able to now experience the same experiences that others on the other side of town might experience as well. So that's what I'm here for. And I hope that my fellow CEOs will follow in that path as well.
Appreciate that. Fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. We hope so too.
So Cornelius, we're going to do 5 rapid fire questions here. And the first one of those is, what are you reading or listening to right now that you would recommend to someone else?
There's a great book that I reread once a year. It's called Leaders Open Doors. And it really kind of opens up the mindset of any leader, right? Transformational leader, transactional leader, to really think about what you have to do to open up doors for others. And that's really impactful for me, because I try to think about what can I do for someone else, right? And in return, somewhere down the line, that will come back to me in some way, shape, or form. So I lead every day by asking, what can I do for you? What can I do to help move your career forward? What can I do to help open up a door for you? So
awesome. So where do you go for a different perspective? Where do you get a different perspective on things that you're working on?
That's a great question. I'm a news junkie. So I turn on CNN on one morning and Fox News the other morning, and I get two different perspectives on life there. So that's traditionally where I go to kind of figure out how to find myself kind of an equilibrium.
What's one trend or innovation in the construction industry that you think is going to shape the future?
Building information modeling.
And then the last one, if construction had a tagline, what would it be?
Developing people, transforming communities.
Well said. Well
that's
done.
A perfect fit. Awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate you being on the podcast today. And it's been fantastic.
Thank you for having me. I truly appreciate it.
With that, we want to say thank you so much for joining The Power of Construction today. Please like, subscribe, and share. And we will keep bringing you the stories of leaders who are reshaping our industry with the power of construction.